evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Denny Frary. Each summer, TV9 takes you on vacation as we adopt towns all across eastern Iowa as our town. For 1 week, we focus on all the big things in small town Iowa. We've just wrapped up the Our Town tour for 1997. The TV9 News team visited Waukon, Mount Vernon and Lisbon, New Hampton, and Oskaloosa. Tonight, we're going to revisit those towns and meet the people and see the places that make each of them special and unique. Our first stop tonight is Our Town tour is Waukon. It's not unusual to find towns in Iowa with Indian names, and that's true about Our Town Waukon. The first European settlers in the area named their town after John Waukon, this Winnebago Indian chief. But the townspeople changed the spelling. And as TV9's Dave Franzman tells us, early settlers chose Waukon as the Alameda County seat. But it took a real fight to keep the courthouse there.
George Shattuck claims the honor as the first settler, but no photos exist, just this drawing showing the wagon trip from Illinois to Waukon. Shattuck eventually built a log home and in 1853 donated 40 acres for the site of a town and county seat. The old courthouse and now county museum was built 8 years later, but Waukon had to literally fight to keep the county offices. An election in 1862 made Lansing the county seat, but another election reversed the move. While a battle raged in court, Waukon residents decided one night to take matters into their own hands with a raid on Lansing.
They went after dark, which was probably not the best thing to do, and broke into the courthouse in Lansing and retrieved all of the county records. And from what I've read and heard, the horses were going full pace back to Waukon. The bouncing and all of that, some of the records were lost.
Waukon raiders had to give the records back, but eventually the courts returned the offices and the county records to Waukon for good. The town started a period of steady growth. The arrival of the railroad in the 1870s spurred development, especially in one unusual way.
Well, it's not too hard to find something unique about any Iowa community, and this is something that's hard to miss in Waukon. Now, this is not your average bit of Iowa rock. This gigantic chunk is a piece of iron ore, and that's one of Waukon's claims to fame. They are the site of the one and only commercial iron mine in the state of Iowa.
The debris left now in this pasture may not look like much, but imagine it's 100 years ago. Iowa miners dig out huge holes in the earth. Machines grind away, separating rock from iron ore, and other workers build giant trestles to run rail cars to the mine.
So for about 30 years or so, it was a significant feature in the life of the community.
Unfortunately, there just wasn't enough Iowa iron ore to compete with richer mines in northern Minnesota. But Waukon still has a rich heritage of hardy pioneers and current residents who keep working to make this corner of northeast Iowa a better place to live and work. Dave Franzman, KCRG, TV9 News.
You know, many times we miss the many wonders of nature around us, but not in Our Town Waukon. It's home to hundreds of beautiful trees, and one of them is a state champion of sorts. TV9's Mark Thomas shows us one of Waukon's best kept secrets.
An old and majestic tree stretches to the sky about a block from downtown Waukon. It's the largest living tree in Iowa, 75 feet high with a spread of 83 feet. It's also the largest cucumber magnolia tree in the United States.
This is as far north as you'll find a magnolia variety.
Jay Johnson with Waukon Trees Forever says the tree is at least 130 years old. Most cucumber magnolias are found in the southern part of the country. In the 1870s, a local orchard owner brought the tree up north to Waukon by train, and it has thrived ever since.
It's a real nature phenomenon, how it could get this big and still survive over the years, especially in this climate.
The tree blossoms in the spring with tulip flowers that give off a dazzling perfume-like smell. The cucumber magnolia tree is a member of a giant parade of trees here in Waukon, and people here really take a lot of pride in the trees that surround the community. Another unique nearby natural treasure is this 130-year-old ironwood tree.
The reason it's called an ironwood tree is because I don't think you can drive a nail in the trunk of this thing without bending it for sure.
The ironwood towers 40 feet high.
It's a good yard tree because it's nice shade.
Pruning the tree must be quite a challenge with branches that are as tough as iron.
I'm sure that many saws have been resharpened if they would try to saw a branch off.
From the ironwood tree to the cucumber magnolia tree, Waukon residents hope the wondrous trees will live on.
The history, again, is hard to predict because it is advanced age. So you never know how long it will be with us. Trees age and die just like people.
That's why Waukon residents enjoy the simple pleasures brought to life by noble trees. In our town, Waukon, Mark Thomas, KCRG TV 9 News.
Thanks, Mark. No matter where you look in our town, odds are you'll find people helping people. TV 9's Jenna Miller says that's part of what makes our town, Waukon, a great place to live.
Behind almost every door in this Waukon community of about 4,000, a friend is found.
This is St. Vincent de Paul in Waukon. It is manned completely by volunteers, and probably 40 to 50 volunteers who work here each month.
Fran Busness of the Retired Senior Volunteer Program organizes more than 350 volunteers in Waukon.
4 and 5, thank you.
Here, they sell merchandise to the needy and then donate the money.
This is the Good Samaritan Center in Waukon. It's one of our largest nursing homes. We have volunteers doing crafts, bingo, visiting one-on-one, doing errands for the shut-ins.
Here, volunteers brighten the day of those who may have no other visitors.
This is the Waukon Dining Center, and it's located at South Ridge Housing, and the residents and older people really appreciate the volunteers serving these meals.
And here, residents come for food and friends. Those here think it's a pretty good deal.
Well, there are so many things that need to be done in a community and wouldn't be done if we didn't have volunteers.
The writing is on the wall here in Waukon. People of all ages volunteer. Hundreds of them gave their time and effort to help build Hideaway Park. Construction here took only one weekend.
It was raised with all donated funds and fund drives, and it was put up at about 1/4 of the cost if you would have bought it and had it put up.
Pull yourself up. Volunteerism in Waukon is helping its youth reach new heights. By example, volunteers are building a strong foundation for their children.
Well, it just gave me a super good feeling and a lot of pride for the community.
A community helping each other be proud of themselves.
I think there's a just pride for the community and proud of where they live, and they just want to take their turn to making it a little better.
In our town, Waukon, Jenna Miller, KCRG TV 9 News.
There are a lot of wonderful and amazing stories to tell in our town, Waukon, and one of those stories is about Mike Snitker. Doctors diagnosed him with MS 3 years ago, but TV 9's Lori Johnson says this special man from our town found a way to fight back.
7 years ago, Mike and Julie Snitker didn't know if they'd ever be able to walk together again. Mike's health started going downhill and no one knew why. In December 1993, doctors diagnosed him with multiple sclerosis.
When I heard that I had MS, I was just totally relieved because I had gone through 4 years of declining health. We had no idea what was going on.
Doctors said Mike's case was untreatable, so he had to spend the majority of his time in bed. Most of the traditional treatments weren't working, but the family didn't give up. Mike started looking for alternative treatments, with everyone's support, including the dedicated family dog named Bear. Mike and Julie grew vegetables in this garden and added them to Mike's diet. He also went through electrostimuli and turned to a supplement used overseas to help cancer patients.
I knew Mike. I mean, he wasn't a quitter. And we knew that when he first had his first treatments, it wound up, he was in the hospital. And we just basically weren't going to accept giving up.
It was a trying time for the Snitkers. Julie went back to school so she could get a job to support the family.
A year ago, to my daughter's graduation, I pushed him in a wheelchair. This year, for my graduation, he walked with me.
Mike keeps his wheelchair around, but he doesn't use it much. In fact, he participated in a 5-kilometer walk a few weeks ago. Mike gets emotional when he thinks about how far he's come.
Life is great. Every day I wake up and I smile. My wife, she always hears me.
Mike has turned his illness into inspiration for others. He works on the internet to educate other MS patients. He does the same thing with a group called the MS Dream Team. Michelle Heffernan is the other founder. She suffers from MS too.
Seeing him just overcome all of that, and my symptoms are nowhere near as severe as Mike's, and that made me, you know, look what he's done. I don't really have a lot to complain about because I don't have such severe symptoms.
So has Mike stumbled upon a breakthrough in treating MS? No one knows for sure. Mike knows he continues to improve and is thankful he can share his story with other people. In our town, Waukon, Lori Johnson, KCRG, TV9 News.
It's a neat story. When we return, we'll hit the road for our towns, Mount Vernon and Lisbon. Find out why the towns are so different, even though they're so close together. And we'll show you how our town's kids are getting a real head start in education, one that may help your children. Welcome back to TV9's Our Town Special. I'm Denny Ferrari. Our next stop on Our Town tour takes us to Mount Vernon and Lisbon. Both towns have long and proud histories that began in the 1840s. Today, the communities touch, but as TV9's Gerald Resnick shows us, they grew independently.
You can see signs of the first families who called Lisbon home. The Ebys built the first house in 1848 with its unique porch over the sidewalk. Other buildings mark Lisbon's early history, but don't tell the true story of its name. Historians aren't quite sure where Lisbon came from because the first people here called it Yankee Grove.
We're proud of our town, and it's got a lot of history in this town, an awful lot of history. The homes, the businesses that used to be here. Main Street was a very thriving community, you know, back then.
Early on, our town had it all, as you can see in these turn-of-the-century photographs and postcards. Two of everything: drugstores, shoe stores, hotels, mills, and even candy stores. The chicken factory was a popular place to work, and the community celebrated success with festivals like Sauerkraut Days.
It's a tradition that's started in 1909. It brought in...
Why sauerkraut?
It was a Dutch town. The sauerkraut, the cabbage was raised by a local businessman, and they cooked the cabbage. The sauerkraut started at like big vats and they served it.
The Lincoln Highway and Railroad helped Lisbon grow for 30 years. In fact, passengers on the cross-country Denver Steamliner ate Lisbon brand butter. One of Lisbon's most unique claims to fame, though, is a rock in the cemetery. One of only 2 boulders ever removed from the Gettysburg battlefield to honor Civil War soldiers. While some Pennsylvania settlers started building homes in 1847 in Lisbon, some merchants found this hill along present-day Highway 1. And they found they could serve the military building a road from Iowa City to Dubuque.
That's the only reason for this town. It's got to be a hill and the accident of somebody plotting the major highway in Iowa over that hill.
Cornell College historian Dick Thomas says until that accident, no one lived on the hill. Merchants named the community Pinhook, but later chose the more distinguished name of George Washington's home when they incorporated in 1865. Mount Vernon grew with the help of other engineering accidents like the first cross-county road and first cross-country road, the Lincoln Highway. Historians mark the community's history with transportation eras, like the railroad era, which once brought a president to town. But the most important era started with Cornell College. Since 1853, Cornell has served as Mount Vernon's most important industry, never failing to graduate a student.
George Bowman, who was probably the founder of Cornell, had failed in an attempt to start a college in Iowa City, but he made it here.
These communities continue to make it despite change.
We've been drawn into the suburban magnet, yet we are far enough out to have a sense of independence and some control over our economic destiny.
A destiny with a proud history to look back on. In our towns, Lisbon and Mount Vernon, Gerald Resnick, KCRG, TV9 News.
Education is important in our town, Mount Vernon, and our town, Lisbon. In a moment, we'll teach you an important lesson about Cornell College in Mount Vernon. But first, we want to take you to the Lisbon Early Childhood Care and Education Center. The center opened its doors in August of 1991. TV9's Lori Johnson says it's been growing ever since. In fact, there's a waiting list to get in.
It's just after 7 in the morning, and Elizabeth Riekers and her husband Carl are dropping off their 3 children at the Lisbon Early Childhood Care and Education Center. They've been bringing them here for almost 2 years.
Well, we hate to have to leave them, but they really enjoy coming. They do a lot of fun things in the summers.
The center has a before and after school program along with a preschool and summer program. Children of all ages play and learn at the center. Children like 2.5-year-old Reed Smith. His parents moved to the Lisbon area about a year ago. Reed receives all kinds of different opportunities.
He can get used to the children very early and develop friendships, and it just builds for future friendships.
There's something that sets this learning center apart from others.
Our center was built on community support. We wouldn't have been able to build this center without the people in the community.
Volunteers refinish the tables kids eat and play on. They also built most of the furniture, including this loft. The center is located in the Lisbon Community School. It used to be an industrial arts room. Now children are finding different ways to build a bright future.
I really like the color. You get a color, you get a play, and when we go outside, you get to go out there and play football.
What's your favorite thing to do then?
Play football outside.
One of the missions of the center is to help as many people as possible. So on any day, you can find young children, high school and college students, along with senior citizens, working together. Everyone learns from everyone else. Marnie Hell is a senior at the University of Northern Iowa. She's also a student teacher at the center this summer, and she's gaining a lot of valuable experience.
A lot of hands-on things that you don't learn in the classroom, like how to deal with certain situations that come up that you don't think about.
Each morning starts off with a good breakfast and is followed by grooming. The lessons for these young students aren't only found in books.
We have to go through our safety rules before we go out.
A bike safety course teaches them to travel with care.
The most important lesson that we teach them is morals, self-discipline, respect for others, and things that if parents had time to do, they would.
This education center is a place where kids can toss around new ideas and where those ideas can help them reach new heights. In our town, Lisbon, Lori Johnson, KCRG, TV9 News.
From preschool to college, our towns, Mount Vernon and Lisbon, have it all when it comes to education. Back in 1853, leaders in Mount Vernon built Cornell College, and now, 144 years later, it's still thriving. TV9's Kelly Schulz takes us on a tour of campus to see firsthand the big benefits of a small college.
The Cornell College campus is not big, but it's beautiful. The picturesque, quaint 16-block area is home to 1,100 students. It's the only campus listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Cornell Professor Emeritus of History Richard Thomas has been here 30 years. He took me on a scenic tour. First stop, the first building built here, the Administrative Offices building known as the Old Sem building. Back in the 1850s, it served as an all-purpose building. Next stop, King Chapel. Financial problems plagued this project. Construction started in 1876 but wasn't finished until 6 years later in 1882. Cornell College's King Chapel is really the centerpiece of this historic campus. Over the years, such renowned artists as Marian Anderson, Leontine Price, and the Chicago Symphony have performed here. Inside, the chapel seats 1,200 people. It's used mainly today as a lecture and concert hall. The women's dorm, known as Bowman Hall, originally built in 1885, just underwent a $2 million restoration. The dorm is really a large house. Inside, you'll find large parlor rooms for students to socialize. During the summer, you won't see many students walking around campus, but you can find some junior high students here. For 10 years now, gifted and talented 6th through 8th grade students have been coming here for the College for Kids program. Kids choose 3 courses to take for 2 weeks. This group is studying theater with Cornell instructor Jody Hovland.
This is a way to introduce them to that working process and maybe light a few fires along the way.
Christine Addy could be one of the fires lit.
It's just really fun to pick your own courses because you get to do things that you want to do instead of in school where you have to do those classes.
Cornell is one of 3 colleges in the country that offers a curriculum of 1 course at a time. What this means is just that. Students take just 1 course at a time. They take 1 course for 3.5 weeks and then move on to the next subject. Students take 9 courses a year. Cornell started the program 20 years ago. Religion professor David Weddle has taught at Cornell for 25 years.
And the 1 course at a time plan is based upon the premise that we are here to teach them how to think, how to acquire certain analytical skills, make them independent critical thinkers.
The unusual curriculum attracted President Les Garner 3 years ago.
Under 1 course at a time, a student immerses himself or herself in the subject matter.
Student R.J. Holmes came to Cornell 2 years ago from Colorado and is happy he did.
To me, Cornell really epitomizes what a college, at least a liberal arts college, should be, with people interacting with each other as students, as faculty, and set it up in a really beautiful environment.
In our town, Mount Vernon, Kelly Schultz, KCRG, TV9 News.
Thank you, Kelly. A group of history buffs wants to bring Lincoln back to our towns, Mount Vernon and Lisbon. No, not the president, but Lincoln, the highway. It was the first paved road to reach coast to coast, and as TV9's Wendy Brown reports, fans would like to revive the famous road's popularity.
In order to understand what makes this small stretch of road in downtown Lisbon so historic and so remarkable, we must travel back in time, all the way back to the beginning of the century. This is what Main Street Lisbon used to look like.
These were all mud roads. There wasn't gravel, there wasn't anything, it was mud roads. And they were, the automobiles were having a hard time getting through. I mean, they would just simply get stuck and have to stay there for a couple of days. And a lot of times it'd be the horses and wagons that would come and pull them out.
In 1913, a group of businessmen and auto enthusiasts decided to mark out a highway across the U.S. They named it the Lincoln Highway. The route proved so popular, they decided to pave it. This is where the Lincoln Highway really took root in eastern Iowa. It's a stretch of road between Mount Vernon and Cedar Rapids called the Seedling Mile. A bunch of businesses got together and decided they would pay to pave this mile of road, thinking that other businesses would follow suit. They didn't. The Seedling Mile remained the only paved part of the Lincoln Highway in the area until 1920. That's when the federal government started collecting the gas tax and building roads. When the feds finally paved the Lincoln Highway, they changed the original route and designated it U.S. Highway 30. Highway 30 today is a straighter and safer stretch of road, but it's definitely not the same as the old Lincoln Highway. That's why members of the Lincoln Highway Association are fighting to bring the old Lincoln Highway back.
But we are interested in preserving, in some sense, what it was like, not only to go across the United States between 1913 and 1958, or 56, when the bypasses go through, but also what it was like to go, for the pioneers in wagons, to go from Tipton to Marion.
They are making some progress. The Iowa Department of Transportation is helping fund research about Iowa's stretch of the Lincoln Highway. It'll document historic structures and original routes like this original highway marker, and it'll decide how to protect them. Many could wind up on the National Registry of Historic Places. But to Lincoln Highway fans, they're preserving more than buildings or stretches of road. They're preserving a way of life, a piece of Americana for posterity.
There's the feel of the small town. And you don't get it driving by on the highway outside of town. You come into town, you stop in at the cafe and stop in at the local grocery store and the small shops, the antique stores.
And it pumps people and tourist dollars through our towns, Mount Vernon and Lisbon. The small town charm, narrow streets, and gorgeous scenery is enough to keep people coming back time and again. In our towns, Mount Vernon and Lisbon, Wendy Brown, KCRG, TV 9 News.
Our journey to our town continues right after a break. Next, you'll practically be able to taste the sweetness of our town, New Hampton, thanks to one of the sweetest names in the bakery business. And meet some one-of-a-kind twins who've lived near our town for more than a century. Find out how they've lived to be over 100 coming up. Welcome back to TV9's Our Town Special. I'm Denny Frary. Our next stop on Our Town Summer Tour is New Hampton. About 4,000 people call our town their town. Throughout its history, transportation's played a key role in the development of New Hampton. Two main rail lines met there, making the community an early crossroads for train traffic. And today, several highways intersect in our town. TV9's Dave Franzman says the history of New Hampton shows pioneers made the most of their opportunities.
On the map, New Hampton appears a perfect choice for a county seat. In fact, one downtown intersection is the exact geographical center of Chickasaw County. Back in the 1850s, other communities fought for the title. First one settlement, then another forced elections to claim the courthouse and cried voter fraud at the results. In 1858, a mob stormed Merchant Harrison Gurley's store, grabbing a safe containing the county records and tossing it out a second-floor window.
Well, maybe it's a little tough these days to relate to the great safe incident here in New Hampton. And in fact, it's a little tough to visualize. Now, this is the exact spot where it happened, although the building involved was demolished more than 100 years ago. But if you use your imagination, you can hear the sound of angry voices, people running up and down the stairs, and then all of a sudden, well, maybe you had to be there, but it was a significant event in the town's history.
They brought some sort of a suit against him, and they made him bring back the records and so on, and the state that finally decided that it would be New Hampton.
How important was all the fuss? Well, those other two communities opposing New Hampton no longer exist. Even after securing the role as county seat, New Hampton was a swampy spot in those days, and some people didn't expect a lot of growth. Local history buff Bob Larkin says even in the early part of this century, New Hampton streets were so muddy you could get a horse stuck on Main Street.
Yes, absolutely. They had horses down in the mud. And it seems impossible, but it's the truth.
But in the late 1860s, fortune smiled. One main rail line, then another crossed paths here, setting New Hampton on the fast track for development.
Okay.
Former State Highway Commissioner Bob Rigler says the modern-day equivalent for that kind of economic opportunity would be a new interstate highway nearby.
It had to be a great factor in the development of New Hampton and the decision of people to go into business and professions and that sort of thing.
Transportation brought all sorts of people and changes. Being at the center of things helped New Hampton grow both 100 years ago and today. Dave Franzman, KCRG, TV9 News.
Our town's largest employer is celebrating its 25th anniversary in our town, New Hampton. The Sara Lee Bakery opened its doors in New Hampton back in 1972. TV9's Mark Thomas takes you inside the Sara Lee plant to meet the people who make all of those tasty treats.
The Sara Lee Bakery lies just north of town on Highway 63. The mammoth plant covers 356,000 square feet. This year, Sara Lee is celebrating its 25th anniversary here in our town, New Hampton. Many of the bakery's 560 employees have worked here since day one, like Sharon Haskovic.
Without Sara Lee, I think a lot of the businesses downtown would have had hard times through these years. You know, you've got a lot of money being spent in this community. And I think for the most part, you know, it's worked well together.
The plant is becoming more and more automated, with machines doing everything from rolling out bread dough to adding cream topping to cheesecakes. Computers monitor more than 150 different varieties of products as they go down the line. We're in front of one of Sara Lee's monster ovens, and this thing stretches back 100 feet or so. And believe it or not, 100 cheesecakes shoot through this oven every minute. The cheesecakes are made from the original Sara Lee recipe that dates back more than 40 years. The cheesecakes are frozen through a special method called blast freezing. The cakes are super cooled down to around 60 degrees below zero.
That's how we freeze in the quality, so to speak.
First shift operations manager Cleet Welter says the cheesecakes get frozen on spiral conveyors.
The product gets spiraled up and spiraled down, thereby giving us a dwell time of half hour to 45 minutes in order to attain the temperatures that we need.
All of the bakery's products go through a tedious packaging process, some of it done by hand and others by machine. The products end up in Sara Lee's gigantic 100,000 square foot freezer. Later, the cakes and treats are loaded onto semi-trailers and sent off to the market. Around 30,000 cases leave the bakery every day. But don't forget about quality control.
7869s, cinnamon rolls, had good weight control, good volume on product, good cinnamon filling distribution.
Every day, bakery supervisors conduct a panel to inspect a sampling of the previous day's products.
We measure and we taste, and we put all of our product through a microbiological screen and do a complete testing to make sure it's a safe product to consume.
Now, you wouldn't think I'd leave here without doing a little quality control of my own. Well, it's the pains of being a reporter, I guess. In our town, New Hampton, Mark Thomas, KCRG TV 9 News.
Mark, you're a lucky guy. New Hampton is a special community because of its people, and many of them have lived around our town most of their lives, and that's quite a statement for the Lentz brothers. TV 9's Ryan Girding says they're the oldest living twins in Iowa.
Charlie and George Lentz have never strayed far from each other. They've been twin partners and twin brothers for 100 years, the oldest living twins in Iowa and quite possibly all of America.
What's the secret to lasting so long?
Oh, getting plastered every Saturday night.
Charlie is the joker and George plays the straight man. It's been that way since the two were born October 7th, 1896 in central Iowa. When they were 16, Charlie and George moved to North Washington, just outside of New Hampton. They were farmers and their farms were right next door to each other. Through all the years, they looked out for one another. When one of them had a bad crop, the other would help him out. They say that teamwork is what's kept them around for so long.
I think we got along not only as a twin, but as a family. I don't think any big family has ever lived as contented a life as we have. I can truthfully say there has never been any serious disagreements in our family.
Unless, of course, it comes to cards. George and Charlie are ruthless card players. They'll play with whoever will take them on, and they don't always get along when they play together.
You get in fights? Who would win?
It was a tie.
Charlie and George now live at the New Hampton Care Center. They say the people there and in New Hampton are the reason why they've lived in and around our town for 80 years.
Well, like the people, as a rule, they're real congenial people up here.
That's not to say George and Charlie are always congenial towards each other. Charlie says he used to cut George's hair when they were younger. Now Charlie says George has more face to wash than he does hair to cut.
100 years is a long time to deal with anybody.
Second 100 would be a lot longer.
And you'd almost think they'll make it that long. They're healthy, they're happy, and most importantly for them, they're together. In our town, New Hampton, Ryan Girding, KCRG TV 9 News.
Well, New Hampton is not only home to Iowa's oldest living twins, it's also home to 14-year-old Monica Reichs. Now, she is this year's state spelling bee winner. TV 9's Jenna Miller shows us that it takes more than a village to raise a winner. It takes our town, New Hampton.
Monica, what's your soup? Why'd you put that in the...
Monica Reichs spends a lot of time with her 4 younger brothers and sisters answering questions. She's used to answering. Monica is Iowa's spelling bee champion.
She won the title last March in Dubuque. She spelled the word oxymoron in the 36th round.
I felt really privileged that I got to represent New Hampton because it would be 2 years in a row.
Last year, Iowa Spelling Bee champion was also from New Hampton. Monica says it's not that there's something in the water here. There's something in the people here.
Mostly what they did to prepare me was they just gave me a lot of moral support. They were always for me, and they knew that I could do it.
Monica did do it, but she admits she can't do it all.
My spell check on my computer gets used pretty regularly.
And Monica works regularly as a library volunteer. Monica's mother, Jill, says giving to the community is important because the community gives back.
There's a lot of pride in this community, and there's a lot of people who are really proud of her and proud of her accomplishment.
New Hampton is all about expanding horizons, and Monica's family says that attitude spells success for her future.
I think that really epitomizes what our hopes are for her is that she dreams big and follows, whatever it is that she's called to do.
When Monica was called to spell didacticism in the 3rd round of the national competition in Washington, she misspelled the word, but Monica's parents taught her there's more to life than spelling.
I'd sure hate to think that she'd just be a #1 speller for the rest of her life. And that would be her only accomplishment. But I know that she's more well-rounded than that. Most of the kids in New Hampton are.
And if most of the kids in New Hampton are like Monica, that spells out one favorable future for this community.
New Hampton, N-E-W space H-A-M-P-T-O-N, New Hampton.
In our town, New Hampton, Jenna Miller, KCRG TV 9 News.
Some of the people in our town, Oskaloosa, have been lighting up the lives of folks across the globe, literally. Next, see for yourself what makes one of Oskaloosa's biggest companies so bright, and find out how you can take a trip back in time just by taking the short drive to one of our town's finest farms. Welcome back to TV9's Our Town Special. Our 4th and final stop on Our Town tour is Oskaloosa. The people of our town have lived a lifetime of change, and their talents and skills have helped them adapt and stay competitive. TV9's Mike Wagner tells us about the different lifestyles that have given our town such a diverse history.
Most counties pick their county seat's location because it's smack dab in the middle. Geography played somewhat of a part in placing Oskaloosa. The site is on a ridge between 2 rivers. Native Americans lived on the land until Quakers and other settlers arrived in the mid-1800s. The first of several population explosions took place just 2 decades later. 38 coal mines fueled that growth as miners and their families moved to town.
This Oskaloosa and our county were covered with coal mines. There were many, many here. They were good, rich, deep veins. And at one time, Mahaska County was at the top of the list in Iowa in coal production.
Those deep coal veins led to deep pockets, and hard-working merchants quickly set up shop to get a piece of the action. They offered everything and anything at competitive prices. Frankel's one-price clothing shop later became what's known as Yonkers today. Their audience of potential customers grew as the rail lines found their way to Oskaloosa.
Well, the coal brought with it the railroads. We had something like 7 or 8 lines going through here, and we had a lot of passenger trains coming through north and south.
With people moving to town, taking the train to town, or coming to town to drop off the latest crop, Oskaloosa tried to keep them in town longer with different forms of entertainment. One of the most popular proved to be the parade, when the circus also came to town.
Unload all their paraphernalia, all their wagons and lions and all that, and went out to the fairgrounds. Then in the morning at 10 o'clock, they'd have a parade.
The town's band started performing in the late 1800s. Its latest members fill the town square every week.
They were invited to play in the 1800s and early 1900s all over the United States, and did at the St. Louis Exposition and a number of other places.
A number of colleges tried to expand the minds of Oskaloosa's growing population. Oskaloosa College was eventually sold to the Drake family, who then moved it to Des Moines. William Penn opened in 1873, helping train the local labor pool, and Vennard Bible College attracts students from around the world. The town's square is attracting new business to Oskaloosa today. Many of the new stores are setting up shop in buildings that still bear the names of some pioneer merchants, proving that the Oskaloosa of today is much like the town of yesteryear, confronting change and staying strong. From our town, Oskaloosa, Mike Wagner, KCRG, TV9 News.
You know, you'll get a new appreciation for the conveniences of modern life when you visit the Nelson Pioneer Farm. It's in our town, Oskaloosa. The farm shows you what life was like in the mid-1800s. TV9's Lori Johnson takes us on a tour.
You can step back in time by walking around the Nelson Pioneer Farm. It's located just off Highway 63 and nestled in the rolling hills of Mahaska County. Kay Boot is the curator of this Pioneer Museum. She's been giving children tours for the last 4 years.
This is what a jail cell looks like. I'm sure you wouldn't want to have to go to jail.
The Nelson Pioneer Farm is much more than just a farm. Daniel Nelson built this house between 1852 and 1853. He and his family lived in it and worked the land until 1941. After that, the family gave the house and the land to the Mahaska County Historical Society. Many other different buildings dot the landscape so visitors can see what life was like more than 100 years ago. These children are getting a hands-on lesson on farm equipment. The kids on this tour all have different displays they enjoyed the most.
The wagon.
Why'd you like the wagon?
'Cause it pulled chickens on it, and it was a living home with top over it that's leather, and you could sit on it and put your horse on it.
Life has changed a lot since people did the majority of their shopping at the general store. That's why the Mahaska County Historical Society has kept this pioneer farm going for more than 30 years.
The Nelsons wanted the farm to be a museum type thing, educational for the children to see, you know, how the pioneers lived in those days.
And how they were entertained. This is an old-fashioned music maker called an Angela. Visitors also learn about the rich Native American roots in Mahaska County.
The most valuable lessons they learned is that they take a lot of stuff for granted, like Miss Kay explained to them they didn't have electricity and the children couldn't imagine. No electricity.
And it might also be hard for them to imagine going to class in a one-room schoolhouse. This is the Prine School. It's the oldest one-room schoolhouse in Mahaska County. And this is something else you won't find in eastern Iowa, a mule cemetery.
Mr. Nelson chose this little spot, and he dug a hole and he buried Becky. Later on, Jenny died, and so they buried Jenny alongside of Becky. They're both laying with their heads on a satin pillow so that they can rest in peace.
The Nelson Pioneer Farm gets more and more popular each year.
A lot of people come back into the museum and say they've been to a lot of museums through the country, and they think one of ours is one of the best.
In our town, Oskaloosa, Lori Johnson, KCRG, TV9 News.
One Oskaloosa company is lighting up the world and putting our town on the map. The Musco Lighting Corporation is a $50 million business, and as TV9's Wendy Brown reports, it's earning a brilliant reputation worldwide.
Oskaloosa's hiding a secret in its sleepy town square, a $50 million secret. Well, the Musco Lighting Corporation is a secret to much of eastern Iowa, but Hollywood and the sports world know it well. Musco Lighting lit up the Field of Dreams. It was the familiar, eerie glow of Jurassic Park. And soon it will eliminate the best and the fastest at Daytona Beach, Florida. Seems pretty incredible for a small-town company that started 21 years ago, but Musco co-owner Joe Crookham has bigger fish to fry.
I keep trying to remind people around here that 95% of the people in the world don't live in the United States, so there's a lot of market outside of here that we really need to be focusing on.
By anyone else's standards, he's already pretty focused. Musco Lighting also does business in 9 different countries. It's lit up everything from a cricket stadium in India and a rugby park in Australia to the first lighted horse track in England. You wouldn't think about a big multinational company like Musco being someplace like the heart of downtown Oskaloosa, but the owners say really it is a perfect location for all of their needs. After all, they can deal with England and India over the telephone and get all their business done during the day, and then walk across the street at 7 o'clock and listen to the band concert.
Email and phone call and fax are the major process of communication, and when somebody communicates by one of those means, they don't know whether or not you're sitting on top of the financial towers in Manhattan or whether or not you're sitting out here across from a town square in Oskaloosa, Iowa. And frankly, I've been both places, and it's a lot easier to get around here.
Part of what makes life easier is our town Oskaloosa's easygoing small-town atmosphere. The other part is Musco's own creation. It makes life very easy on employees like Heidi Hugan by providing the Musco Kids Van to take her kids back and forth to activities. Flex time allows employees to reschedule work hours when something unexpected comes up.
Actually, it's pretty much essential. You know, it's very hard when you're working full-time to balance home and family. And it's easy for me because I know that if some important issue comes up, that they understand that that's my top priority.
Musco employs some 500 people around the world, most in eastern Iowa. The secret's out. The Musco Lighting Corporation is making the world and eastern Iowa a brighter place to live and work. In our town, Oskaloosa, Wendy Brown, KCRG, TV9 News.
In the early days, the horse was a prime means of transportation around Oskaloosa, but no one has seen a hitching rail around our town for a very long time. TV9 sports director John Campbell was born and raised in Oskaloosa and says horses are now kept for pleasure and for show. And Johnny's going to show us one of the finest horses he's ever seen.
On a hot summer day, Oskaloosaans might see Anita Minert and her horse hitched up and headed to the tasty treat. But most of them haven't seen is the horse at work.
Come around, come around. Yeah, that's it. Come around, clear around. Clear around. Good boy. Back, 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 back. Good boy. Come around the trees. Around the trees. Around the trees. Okay.
The horse is Cash, a 16-year-old Morgan worth his weight in gold. Cash is the Grand National Champion in something called carriage driving.
OEB asked to go through between cones that are only a few inches wider than your wheels, putting one wheel down and making a complete circle without moving, doing figure eights. He's been trained to drive since he was 2, so he's been driving for 14 years. And he has the right attitude to do this stuff. He has to be calm, be able to react quickly. And so we just started doing it, and he enjoys it too.
Can we take a little ride here?
Sure, let's go.
Okay.
Clock. He always has to be steady. He always has to be listening. He's listening to us right now. His ears are going up, which means he's paying attention to what we're doing. And he just has to be willing to do what you want him to do, not have a mind of his own.
So he does have to listen to you.
Oh yeah, quite a bit. Especially when he's doing something he doesn't think he ought to do, like go through water. He's not too thrilled about that, but he has to. He's listening.
And when Cash listens and performs to Anita's satisfaction, there's always the big payoff at the end.
There you go.
A piece of liquor.
Yeah.
In our town, Oskaloosa, I'm John Campbell, KCRG TV9 Sports.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. This special Our Town presentation is almost over, but there are some things we'd like to say. First, we'd like to thank the people from our towns for helping us to make this summer tour possible. They helped us focus on the people and places that make small towns special and unique. For 4 weeks, we looked for the interesting and positive happenings in small town Iowa, and as you've seen during the past 60 minutes, we found all of that and more in Waukon, Mount Vernon, Lisbon, New Hampton, and Oskaloosa. Now the TV9 Our Town tour is over for this summer, but who knows, we may make your town our town next summer. Thanks for watching. Good night.